Hey guys, welcome to Coding After 30. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the projects that I've done. And the reason I'm going to do this is to give you guys an idea of where you should start as a beginner and what your goals should be. I'm also going to show you some of the projects I'm currently working on to kind of give you a heads up where you guys should be going. When you're starting out, it's important to not try to take on too much and do smaller projects first. More importantly, while doing this, you have to know while building your portfolio, some of these simple projects won't cut it. The reason I say this, you have to understand if you're switching careers and maybe you don't have a computer science degree and you're self-taught, you kind of have to build authority and validity that you know what you are doing. And you have to understand your basic HTML and CSS project is not comparable to a 4-year degree. You actually have to do some more complex projects. With that being said, I'm not making this video to discourage you, and I am going to show you some of the simple projects that I've done, but I'm also going to show you some of the code that I'm working on now for you guys to understand this is the goal, or this is where you should go. There's a lot of people out there that'll say, you know, in 2 months, 3 months, you could get that amazing job making $150,000. That is just not true. The truth is it takes work and it is hard work, but it's totally worth it at the end. And so if you put in your time, you will eventually get there. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so here we are on my desktop, and the best thing to do if you're looking to host your projects is to use Netlify. It's absolutely free. It is an amazing service. But with that being said, we're going to jump right into it. So we're going to start with simple HTML and CSS project. Here's one that I've completed following Brad Travesty's tutorial on HTML and CSS. This is a simple website layout using CSS Grid, and it is responsive. So if I move it around, you could see that this adjusts to fit the different size screen, and as you open it, it expands. So this is a responsive design, very simple. So when you're first starting out, it's important for you guys to start with simple HTML and CSS. You need to understand the basics, so when you're moving along into JavaScript, you're not held back by HTML and CSS. Now with that being said, you don't have to become a master. Taking one great HTML and CSS course that will teach you all the basics that you know, that you need to know to be able to create a project like this. And what you need to focus on is just understanding basic idea for a layout, how to do that. So someone should give you a mock-up of this design and you should be able to put it into HTML and CSS. More importantly, you should focus on responsive design. So you have the desktop view, and as you shrink your design, it should adjust for a tablet size view and so on. So this is the project that I did after that tutorial. So this is a little bit more complex. This has zero JavaScript except this section here where it types the text here on the screen. So as you open this up, you have a bunch of different sections, and as you could see, it looks beautiful on the desktop and it is responsive. So if I start shrinking this down, you see it is going to adjust for our tablet view, and if you shrink it down even more, it adjusts to our phone view. And again, this was my final project after I completed Brad Travesty's Modern HTML and CSS course. So this is what I've done, and it has an about page, and here we are. And again, this is responsive, so if I start to shrink this down, it shrinks to the tablet view. Look at this amazing work here. And so I'm going to be honest with you guys, when you're doing your HTML and CSS course, when you're completing your final project, you should try to get it to this type of fidelity project where when you show it to someone, they're going to think like, oh, okay, this was kind of maybe made by a professional. So you kind of have to understand and have a sense about colors and layout and what works well. Now the trick that I used, I just Googled the most common best looking layouts and I basically learned from that. Here's the work section. You could see different transitions, and again, this was from the example of Brad Travesty course. If you take his course and you see his website and you see how this looks, it's different. The idea is when you're trying to make something, you want to put your own spin on it, especially when you're starting out. And here's the basic contact form that I have here, and again, everything is responsive. So this is very beautifully responsive on our mobile device. You know, you go to our about page, and if you as you can see, it's responsive, it works nice. So your goal initially when you complete your HTML and CSS course is not to try to take another HTML and CSS course and another one, is to actually start building your first HTML and CSS website and look into, through practice and failure, to get to something that looks like this. And it does take time. The reason why I don't say to keep taking another HTML course and another HTML and CSS course is because you're doing HTML and CSS 101 like 10 times in a row. It's learn the fundamentals and put it to practice. Now, after you do your first HTML and CSS course, I always recommend doing a JavaScript course. Here's a simple JavaScript example where I created a shopping cart where if you click on the plus, it adds our item to the shopping cart. You could show cart, it will show you which item you added. You could obviously delete it. You could close the cart. So if I want to add item, and again, this is more about JavaScript, so I just used whatever placeholder text, but I could add these two items. You could see in the cart, it has the two items. It shows the total. If you clear one item, it adjusts the total. If you clear the whole cart, it clears the whole cart. The whole point of this app is to get the basic understanding of how to manipulate the DOM. Once you learn the JavaScript language, and this is why you do have to take one JavaScript course and understand the basic of the language, but once you learn JavaScript, you know what our classes are, functions are, what the if statements are, loops, arrays, objects, and comfortable working with that, you will learn about how to manipulate the DOM with JavaScript. And this is basically what this simple shopping cart is. The point here though is once you understand the basics, you don't have to kind of kill yourself by becoming a super duper master, because you're literally not going to use too much of it once you move in and start learning React, because React does things in its own way, and I would say it makes writing JavaScript way easier. So here's another example. This is a simple web layout, and somebody will look at this and be like, hey, it's super simple HTML and CSS site. Oh my gosh, look at it. It's just super simple, and this is responsive too. So if I shrink, you could see it turns into mobile view, and it has the mobile menu. You could go to our about section. I could scroll down. It's nicely formatted. If I could go to testimonials, you see the testimonials here. This is how it looks on a smaller device. If I expand this, you could see this kind of changes. And yes, this is a simple layout. We have our contact form here, looks beautiful. If you go to our home page, yeah, this is a video. I don't know how I feel about putting videos. I guess it looks pretty cool. You could plan your getaway. You have this awesome menu, right? You close it, it goes back. Now the beauty of this is not a simple HTML and CSS website. It is a website created with React.js. And so once you learn HTML and CSS, building your basic website, right? Once you learn enough JavaScript, you'll kind of understand how to make things happen based on clicks and events and how to manipulate the DOM. You don't have to become a master, right? You start taking your simple HTML and CSS website and you convert it to a React-based website. After that, you could look to learn about authentication. I didn't finish this, but the idea here is that I'm using React, and you have to, once you understand the general idea of React, is to start thinking about this idea of working with an API, working with a backend. Now, I didn't create a backend here from scratch. I'm actually using Google's Firebase authentication. So here, if you had a username and password, you could enter it and you could sign up. If you don't have one, you could go sign up. You could enter your name here. I'm just gonna say Bob. His last name will also be Bob. His email be bob@email.com, and then we're going to add a password here. Bob is cool, right? Not super secure password, but it's okay. And we sign up, and boom, once you sign up, it brings you to this authenticated page. If you click log out, it will log out. If you want to log in, you would just type in your credentials again. So again, this is super simple, but the whole point here is that you have to start thinking about, okay, I have a simple website that I build with React, and then what? Well, then you have to think about, okay, I need to have some sort of functionality. Do we do it? We want to have some sort of login, be able to have content for logged in users, and also be able to populate the data from the back end. And this will bring me to this example here for now. So right now, this is a simple kind of website, and I'll come back to this in a second. And this is a to-do app. The reason why you should do a simple to-do, this is in React, not because anybody's going to be impressed by your to-do app. No one's going to be impressed by your to-do app. But the point why you do it is because you want to have this ability where you start to learn about create, read, update, and delete. A bit basic CRUD application, and you should be able to learn to do it on the front end first. And in this particular application, I'm storing all the information to local data when I made this front end. But the only reason I made this ToDo app, because you shouldn't be making a ToDo app unless you're just starting out. Then you should definitely do it to learn CRUD, create, write, update, delete. But after that, once you've done it once, you don't need to do it again. The only reason I did it for this particular example is because I just need something where I could create, read, update, and delete things, so I could focus connecting this to a backend that I'm actually creating with ASP.NET and C#, because that's something I'm learning now. So here I could add a task name, task. I could add a description. Oh boy, I don't know what to say. And then you could select the importance of to do. If you like to, you could pick the date that it's due. I'm going to say August 5th, add task. Once you add the task, you have the task here. Now we could add another task, and just for simplicity, I'm just going to put 1 1 1 1 1 because I just whatever. And then when you add that task, now you have 2 tasks, and you could upvote the tasks if you want it to be more important. So this is level 3 important. So if we upload this where it goes ahead, okay, now task 1 is more important. Okay, if you download the task 1, now the other task is important. But as you could see, we have delete, upload, download, completed, and edit. And what I'm more interested in is we had the create here, which is the C in the CRUD acronym, create. Then we have read. Read is basically I'm reading some sort of data and it's populating this. Then we have update. So if I want to edit a task, well, maybe I should spell it with capital T. And then instead of oh boy, I would say, I don't know, hello. Yeah, super original here. And if I edit my task, and as you can see, this changed it here. See, it says task and hello. If I say completed, it marks it completed, and it goes to the completed section. So we have add task, which covers the create part. We have read. Read populates this actually from the database. It's not database, it's local storage in this example, to the view. Then we have U for update, which is our edit function. And then we have our delete, which deletes the tasks. Okay, and then we have completed, and I could delete here. So I'll come back to this in a second to talk about where you should go from here. But next step we have here is another React app. And once you created a simple React app, you kind of understand the general CRUD application with a simple ToDo app. You should also continue practicing creating applications where you're actually pulling data dynamically. So here's a Git battle. Basically, it shows all the cool repos that have the highest rating, and you could kind of see them based on HTML repos, CSS repos, JavaScript repos, and cool stuff like PHP and so on. This is all done in React. We're using Context API to manage state for the switching between dark and light theme. And here, what's cool about this, you could compare people repos. So if you click battle, and I'm not gonna put mine because I don't want to embarrass myself, because there's plenty of people that have better GitHubs than I do, but it's okay. So we're gonna, believe it or not, there's a person named A on GitHub and a person named B. Person named B, by the way, has like the coolest picture here. You'll see in a second. So we're gonna make him battle. Who's gonna win? So we have winner, this guy from Ho Chi Minh. Damn, like this guy's killing it. Has a lot of followers. Look at this guy right here with a chicken and a baby with a cigarette. This is amazing. And then you could reset and go back. So the point and the importance of this app, this is a complete React app, and it is basically making calls to an API to get this data. And by the way, this API is a GitHub API that they provide for free. So if you wanted to make something similar to that, you could definitely do that and use their API. And the final project, this is actually something new that I started working on. This is for this idea I had, and this is actually using React Material UI, and I'm going to connect it to SQL database. The reason why I'm doing SQL is because this is something I practice at work or work with at work, so I need more practice using C# and calling to an SQL database. So that's probably what this backend is going to do here. Right now, this is just the beginning, so there's nothing cool to see yet. And so the cool thing about Material UI, you see this effect here for this drawer, the button effects here. We have our login, it looks beautiful. You could go to sign up here. And Material UI makes it very easy creating these layouts. And when I say very easy, I really mean is if you learned basic HTML and CSS class, if then you took simple JavaScript class, and after that you took a React class, and then after that you practice making React apps, and then after that you did a bunch of projects, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to use Material UI. Now, yeah, it's easy because you understand what Material UI is based on. And to kind of give an example, if you've seen some basic HTML and CSS, you're probably familiar with that. Now, if I show you an example of what this looks like in code, you might be a little bit confused if you don't know React, JavaScript, and how Material UI works. So let me show you the code here just for fun. I have so many windows open. Let me quickly jump into the code here. Yes, my computer's name is John Connor because I'm a big nerd. And I'm using Windows. I hate using Windows. I normally use Mac, but it's much easier for me to work on my Windows desktop when I'm recording stuff. I don't know why. But and also because I learned C# and we work in Windows environment at work, I work with Windows, but whatever. Basically, whatever they use at your job is something you have to get comfortable with using. All right, that took like forever. And I love VS Code for everything I do, except sometimes when I do C#, I just use Visual Studio because it's easier. So if you look at the source files here, if you're familiar with React, you have your components and you have your folders. Like, I'm not going to talk too much about what's going on here. Don't worry if you're not here. But the point is, you see this one CSS file, there's really nothing here. And so if you're not sure of how JavaScript works, React works, and how Material UI works, none of this is going to make sense to you. Like, for instance, I'm going to show you the portion which shows this is basically the code for, let me go back to that screen. So here's the screen. We have our app bar, we have our side menu here, and this is basically using Material UI components, and we have our app bar, which is basically the top header. That's the top section. You're probably wondering, how do you connect the CSS? And basically the CSS for this is provided by Material UI. And so how do you change the CSS? Well, you have to understand how Material UI works. And so if you're not familiar with React, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, all this won't make sense to you. And I'm not even going to talk about it too much because it's just a pain in the butt. But basically, all of this code that you see here, app bar, toolbar, with all the icons, with the buttons, it's basically this section here. It's the top section. Then when you see the drawer, that's with the list items, that's the menu. And if I keep scrolling down, you see the main content inside the drawer. So basically the way it works, and the way I guess I used it here, is you have the drawer which closes and opens. This is the side menu, and this section here, you see when I change the links using React Router links, this changes what the view is going to be. Right now it's nothing, but as you could see here, every time I change it, it changes to explore, to videos, to lessons. So now we're on trending, and if this changes, it's going to change the menu. So as you could see, again, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but what I want to show you, not the app itself, but this concept that when you start learning to program, you have to start with the basics. You have to learn your HTML, you have to learn your CSS, you need to learn your JavaScript, then you have to learn your React, then you have to get familiar with the APIs. And then when you start learning things like Material UI, things are easier, and this makes your development easier. But if you're trying to jump into things too quickly, it's going to be very hard. And I'm not saying this to frustrate you guys, but I'm telling you this is because it takes time. I never felt that I was ever going to get to this point, and what I did is just keep going, and never give up. And so here's the same simple app. And then the point here is, I'm not so much focusing on the fact that we have this list that shows all the active, it shows all the completed items, it shows all the items before. As the next step, as you get comfortable with the front end development, being able to pull the data from API, you will eventually start to dip your feet in back end development, which, by the way, nowadays, if you're looking to be a front end developer or a back-end developer, you kind of have to know a little bit about both of those fields. Before, it used to be pretty straightforward, especially in my case, working for a small company. They expect you to be familiar. So here I am. It's a very simple app. It basically has your CRUD functionality that I didn't implement all of it, because instead of using it like I did on the front end and store it to local storage, I'm actually getting this data from an API that I'm working to create. And I'm doing this because I'm learning ASP.NET and C# right now. Learning never stops, guys. You just keep going. It just keep going. So here's the front end made in React and JavaScript. Again, the whole point is not to explain the code to you guys. It's just to explain to you guys that you guys have to learn a lot, and this is not to discourage you, but to encourage you to keep studying, keep going. So now this is the back end, and in this case, I'm using VS Code to do C#. At my work, we use Visual Studio. And again, this is C# code. This is not JavaScript code. This is a backend API that I'm working on right now. I only have a model for tasks, and then I have one controller. This second controller just comes with the app as an example, but the task controller is something that I'm creating, and I'm not even getting the data from the database yet. I'm kind of hard coding it here for the time being, just so I could make sure that my API calls, you know, if you request the task controller, so you see this call right here, API task get all, that basically triggers this controller, and basically what it does, it gets the above data that's hard coded and returns it. If you go to API get completed, it'll show you completed. If you go to get active, it'll show you get active. So this is the back end. And so the point here again is not to make you guys freak out that there's a lot to learn. The point is that there is a lot to learn. It never stops, it keeps going, and you have to keep going. And again, I'm not a beginner, probably like intermediate level. The truth is, to be able to get your first job, there is a lot to learn, and that's why instead of watching YouTube videos all the time, you guys should be coding and coding and coding. And I'm just going to show you one more thing before I go here. So let's see, we talked about Netlify, amazing place to host stuff. Here you go. So here's another app that I'm working on the project, and this idea is, okay, maybe I'm not a backend developer, I don't want to jump into backend yet, but you still have to understand how to create dynamic kind of websites where the data is populated dynamically. And if I were to add someone, we'll say hello, and then we say paul@email.com, whatever, because too lazy to type, add client. As you could see, did not add me. I could definitely know why it didn't add me. I didn't add the error handling when you try to add someone the same email. So let's do a different email at some email.com. So right now this doesn't have validation. And okay, for this app, I gotta fix that. So as you can see what happened, it didn't automatically refresh. Once you add someone new, it's supposed to refresh the list. I will work on that. But the whole point is that you could see that this is dynamically generated and it's pulling data from backend. And I'm actually using this service called Strappy for the backend. And as if I go here into my tasks and users, so let's go to clients first, because this is clients. So we have Paul, we have hello that I added, then we have Paul with some email. So as you could see, this backend, it already exists for me, and so I have to figure out how to use my front-end application to be able to call to this backend and connect to it. This application is a full stack application. The Strappy API is connected to a MongoDB database that I have hosted online, and I'm creating this React app to be able to communicate with it. Again, work in progress, but as you could see, when you're looking to get a job as a web developer, the whole point here is that creating simple to-do apps is not enough. You guys have to be able to understand the front end, understand how to connect to an API, and the back end, and understand how it all works together. There's a lot of studying, and when people try to get into web development because they want to make a lot of money, please understand there's a reason why people get paid a lot of money, and it's not right away. You're not going to get there in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. It takes time. It's a long game, and I wanted to make this video because I want to be honest with you, as this is very important to me, because I'm 40 years old. It took me like a while to finally break into the field, and I don't want to say it's impossible, because it's not. But at the same time, I want to make sure you guys have realistic expectations, knowing that when you're doing the work and you're looking to get into this field, it is going to take work. And I'm going to leave you this with a saying, because I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I'm not saying that to kind of like toot my own horn, but that's an impressive accomplishment. It took me 12 years to get a black belt. If you've done other martial arts and it took you 2 years or a week, I don't know what to tell you. But if we fight, I don't want to talk about it. But the point is, there's a cool saying that I love in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It goes something like this: what's the difference between a black belt and a white belt? And the difference is, a black belt is a white belt that never quit. And the reason why I was able to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, after all the beatings I had my ACL torn, I had other injuries, I just kept going and I never stopped. And it's the same thing with web development. You just have to commit. This is something that you do, and you just have to keep going. And I guarantee you that if you put in the work, you put in the time, you will get there, and you will be really happy about it. With that being said, I just want to say that this field is not for everybody. If you don't like studying, if you don't like spending a lot of time learning new things, this is definitely not the field for you. But to counterbalance that, I'm just going to say, no matter whatever you decide to do in life that you want to be good at, there's always constant studying. There's always that constant hustle to be better. So if you hated this video, which you probably did because I don't know, and then hate, if you liked it and you found this valuable, please hit the like button. And as always, thank you for tuning in, watching some dude on YouTube tell you about programming. But if this was helpful, mission accomplished. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.